want to know. The people want to know. In 50 Cent's video, window shopping, what was your role exactly in that?
What was my role?
He took you shopping. They said he scooped you and took you shopping in the video. That's what they told me. I didn't see the video in a while. He said, I don't know. I just was asking.
I'm gonna let you win today.
Cam'ron didn't hesitate when the topic came up. He made it clear from the jump that he would never speak on this issue before he fully understood it. You could hear it in his voice that this wasn't just talk. It still doesn't sit right with him. He made it clear that what happened between Gucci Mane and Pooh Shiesty goes beyond music, beyond social media, and straight into real-life consequences that don't just disappear once the cameras turn off. He broke it down in a way that had people thinking. From his perspective, this wasn't just about picking sides or deciding who's right and wrong. It was about understanding how things even got to this point. Because when you got an OG like Gucci, someone who's been through real situations and built a reputation over years, linking up with a younger artist like Pooh who's still navigating the game, there's supposed to be some kind of structure there, some kind of guidance. And when that structure breaks down, situations like this start to happen. Cam'ron pointed out something a lot of people didn't want to say out loud. When business and street energy mix, things get unpredictable fast. One minute it's a deal, the next minute it's tension, and before you know it, people are questioning each other's intentions. That's exactly what this situation feels like. A moment where trust falls somewhere in the middle, and once that happens, things start falling apart. He also didn't ignore the bigger picture. Because while people online are arguing about who did what, especially involving artists at that level, it changes how people move. It makes artists more cautious and sometimes more distant, and that's something that lingers long after the fact. At the same time, he kept it real about both sides. He wasn't taking sides or being disrespectful, and he didn't try to tear down Pooh either. He acknowledged what both bring to the table. Gucci as someone who helped shape the modern rap scene and open doors for a lot of artists, and Pooh as someone who represents that new energy the younger audience connects with. Then the conversation shifted into what really has people divided, the idea of how situations like this play out. Cam'ron didn't tell anyone what to do, he just laid out the facts and let them speak. Because every move comes with consequences. Whether you stay silent or speak out, handle things privately or let it play out publicly, people are going to judge it regardless. That's where the tension around Gucci Mane really started to build. Because when he addressed everything through music, especially on a track like Crash Dummy, it shifted the narrative. Instead of things staying behind closed doors, everything got put into the open. Lines about feeling set up, about reading the room and realizing something wasn't right. It made it clear he felt like he walked into something bigger than a simple meeting. From Gucci's side, it sounds like he believed he was stepping into business, only to realize it might have been something else entirely. That feeling alone is enough to change how anyone reacts, because once you feel like your safety or trust is compromised, it's not about contracts or deals anymore. It becomes personal. But on the other side, people started questioning whether taking it to music was the right move. Some feel it gave too much away, like it turned something serious into something performative. Others believed it was his way of controlling the narrative before anyone else could twist it, and that's where opinions really started splitting. Meanwhile, the Finesse 2 Times added another layer by pointing out the generational gap, basically saying younger artists don't always think the same way as veterans, sometimes moving without thinking about long-term consequences. That doesn't justify anything, but it explains why situations escalate instead of getting resolved early. And when you put all of that together, it paints a bigger picture. This isn't just about one incident. It's about how different mindsets, different experiences, and different expectations collided at the wrong time. It's about how things go wrong when communication breaks down and trust disappears. The street code conversation only made things louder. Some people are saying there are lines you never cross, no matter what happens.
Others are saying real life doesn't work like that, especially when things get serious. That divide is what keeps this situation alive, because there's no agreement on what the right move even is. At the center of it all is still Pooh Shiesty, dealing with legal pressure while his name is being discussed from every angle. Depending on how things play out, this could either slow everything down for him or become part of a bigger story that follows him for the rest of his career. And for Gucci, it's about legacy now, not just what he built, but how moments like this shape how people see him moving forward. Because when you've been in the game that long, every decision carries weight, especially when it's tied to something this serious. So when Cam'ron opened that conversation, he wasn't just reacting. He was setting the stage for a bigger discussion that still doesn't have a clear answer. And that's why people are still talking about it, because no matter how you look at it, this situation forces everyone to ask the same question. When things go left like that, what's the right move? And that question is exactly where the debate keeps going in circles, because nobody agrees on what right even looks like when real pressure hits. As the conversation kept spreading, more voices started jumping in, and the tone shifted from analysis to full-blown emotional reactions. People weren't just commenting on Gucci or Pooh anymore. They were projecting their own understanding of loyalty, survival, and respect in the streets and in the industry. Some people stood firm with Gucci Mane, saying he's been through too much to move carelessly or emotionally. From that angle, anything he says or does now is coming from experience. They argue that when someone has already survived the worst parts of the industry and real-life pressure, they don't just react, they calculate. So in their eyes, if Gucci spoke out publicly, it wasn't random, it was intentional, and it came after already weighing everything. But on the other side, public statements and music responses only make things more complicated. Instead of cooling the situation down, it keeps it alive in the spotlight. And in a situation involving Pooh Shiesty, where legal pressure is already part of the story, every new mention becomes fuel for interpretation and speculation. That's why Cam'ron's original perspective hit differently. He wasn't glorifying anything, and he wasn't pretending there's a clean solution. He was pointing out that once trust breaks inside business relationships, everything else becomes reactive instead of planned. And that's exactly what listeners started picking up on when they replayed the songs and statements tied to the situation. Instead of just hearing lyrics and commentary, they started looking for hidden meaning and intent behind every word. That's when narratives start forming faster than facts can catch up. Finesse 2 Times kept reinforcing the idea that the environment plays a role. He highlighted that not every decision comes from long-term planning. Sometimes it comes from what people think is logical in the moment. It doesn't justify the outcome, but it explains why things escalate instead of getting resolved early. Meanwhile, other artists and commentators started pointing out how quickly friendships, business relationships, and mentorships can shift in hip-hop when money, fame, and pressure intersect. One moment it's alignment, the next moment it's distance, and sometimes it only takes one misunderstanding to permanently change the dynamic. Even Cam'ron's tone in later discussions reflected that reality. He kept returning to the idea that the industry doesn't protect people the way outsiders think. From the outside, it looks like contracts, labels, and management teams should prevent situations like this. But inside, dealing still depends on people. No contract can fully control the outcome. Meanwhile, Gucci remains in a position where everything he does is being interpreted through a different lens. Every statement, every lyric, every silence gets analyzed. And that's what happens when a situation becomes bigger than the moment and starts affecting an artist's legacy. For Pooh Shiesty, the weight is different but just as heavy. His situation is no longer just about music or public perception. It's tied to legal reality, which moves independently of online debate. While people online argue, real-world processes continue in the background, unaffected by opinions, reactions, or viral clips. That disconnect is what makes this whole story feel unresolved. Online, it's entertainment and debate. In real life, it's consequences and decisions. And that's where Cam'ron's original point keeps echoing. There is no version of this where everyone walks away seeing it the same way. Some will always see loyalty, some will always see miscommunication, and neither side becomes the final answer. So, as the discussion continues, one thing stays clear. This isn't just a moment people are reacting to. It's a situation people are still trying to understand while it's already moving past them. As the noise kept building, the conversation shifted from what happened to what happens next, and that's where things got even tenser. people began pointing out that once a situation reaches this level, public statements, legal pressure, and industry commentary, it stops being controllable. Every interview clip, every bar in a song, every podcast reaction becomes part of the record people use to form opinions. What Gucci says now gets measured against his past. He's not just an artist in the conversation anymore. He's an established figure whose words carry weight in both the music industry and street narratives. So when he speaks or responds through music, people aren't just hearing emotion, they're trying to decode intent. At the same time, Pooh Shiesty is dealing with a completely different kind of pressure. His situation is no longer just being debated online. It's being handled in the legal system, where perception doesn't matter as much as evidence and procedure. That disconnect is part of why the public conversation feels so chaotic. One side is emotional and interpretive, the other side is procedural and locked into formal steps. Cam'ron's earlier breakdown kept resurfacing in discussions because he touched on something people are now realizing more clearly. Once trust breaks inside business relationships, everything else becomes reactive instead of planned. And that's exactly what listeners started picking up on when they replayed the songs and statements tied to the situation. Instead of just hearing lyrics and commentary, they started looking for hidden meaning and intent behind every word. That's when narratives start forming faster than facts can catch up. Finesse 2Times kept reinforcing the idea that the environment plays a role. He highlighted that not every decision comes from long-term planning. Sometimes it comes from what people think is logical in the moment. It doesn't justify the outcome, but it explains why things escalate instead of getting resolved early. Meanwhile, other artists and commentators started pointing out how quickly friendships, business relationships, and mentorships can shift in hip-hop when money, fame, and pressure intersect. One moment it's alignment, the next moment it's distance, and sometimes it only takes one misunderstanding to permanently change the dynamic.
What made this situation different in people's eyes is how public it became. Instead of staying behind closed doors, it turned into content, music breakdowns, podcast debates, and social media analysis. Once that happens, there's no real way to pause it. Even silence becomes part of the narrative. Cam'ron's framing kept coming back to one core idea. In this industry, perception moves faster than truth. By the time facts are fully understood, people have already formed opinions, picked sides, and built narratives around limited information. These narratives spread and take on a life of their own. This is the world we live in now. Each new reaction adds another layer to the conversation. In situations like this, there isn't a clean ending or a satisfying conclusion. There's only what people choose to believe based on the pieces they've seen. And right now, those pieces are still moving. As the discussion kept unfolding, one thing became obvious. The story stopped being just about one incident and started turning into a wider reflection of how the industry handles conflict when money, reputation, and pressure all hit at the same time. People kept revisiting Cam'ron's earlier comments because his breakdown didn't try to simplify anything. He laid out the uncomfortable truth that in situations like this, nobody walks away completely clean in the public eye. Even if the facts are complicated, perception is what sticks first, and correction usually comes too late. That's why every new reaction kept splitting the audience further apart. One group looked at the situation involving Gucci Mane and said this is what happens when trust gets blurred between business and personal loyalty. Once that line is crossed, misunderstandings don't stay small, they grow fast, especially when people outside the situation start filling in the blanks. Another group focused more on Pooh Shiesty and the legal pressure surrounding him, arguing that once the justice system is involved, everything else becomes secondary. From that perspective, the public narratives don't change outcomes in court, but they do shape how people remember the situation long after it's over. And then there was a third group, probably the loudest online, that treated the whole thing like a cultural debate instead of a personal situation. They weren't just asking what happened between two artists, they were asking what this says about the entire structure of the music industry, especially when younger artists come in fast, sign early, and get exposed to high-pressure environments before they're ready.
That's where the conversation started looping back to something Cam'ron hinted at earlier, the lack of separation between mentorship and business in modern hip-hop. When those overlap too closely, expectations get out of whack. One person views it as strictly professional, while another views it as personal. Finesse 2 Times added a more grounded layer again, emphasizing that not every decision in these situations comes from calculated thinking. A lot of it comes from environment, pressure, and what people are conditioned to accept as normal behavior in the spaces they come from. That doesn't settle the debate, but it explains why these situations rarely unfold in a straight line. As more details and reactions circulate, some people also started noticing how quickly narratives shift depending on who speaks first and who speaks loudest. In situations like this, the first version of the story often sticks, even if later context changes the interpretation. And once a narrative spreads widely, it becomes harder for anyone involved to fully control how they're perceived. That's part of why Gucci Mane addressing things through music had such a strong impact. Music doesn't just report events, it frames emotion. It tells people how to feel about what happened, even if it doesn't provide full context. And once emotion enters the picture, logic takes a back seat to public conversation. But for Pooh Shiesty, the reality is more constrained. His situation isn't primarily being shaped by public opinion anymore. It's being shaped by formal processes that operate independently of social media and commentary. That creates a disconnect between what people debate online and what actually determines the outcome. Cam'ron's perspective keeps coming back into focus because he's right in the middle of everything. And this is the situation that still needs to be resolved.